The stars burned bright and cold on the day humanity made its last stand. Captain Han Te stood on the bridge of the Defiant, watching the enemy fleet fill his view screen like a swarm of metal locusts. He counted the ships, 20 for every one of his own, maybe more. The numbers did not matter anymore. What mattered was that his people were behind him, and the enemy was in front. "Sir, we have confirmation from command," said Lieutenant Yuna. Her voice was steady, but Te had served with her for 10 years. He could hear the fear hiding beneath her words. "Earth has fallen. The colonies on Mars and Europa are gone. We are the last fleet." Te let those words sink into his chest like stones dropping into deep water. Earth was gone. The blue planet where he was born, where his mother still tended her small garden of tomatoes, where children played in parks and old men argued about football. All of it was ash now. He allowed himself one breath of grief. Then he opened his eyes and became a captain again. "Then we make them remember us," he said. "All ships, this is Captain Te. Today we do not fight to win. We fight so that 1,000 years from now, when aliens tell stories to scare their children, they will speak of what humans did here. Make them afraid of us forever." The comm channels erupted with voices. Some were crying, some were praying, but all of them were ready. Engineer Wu's voice crackled from the engine room. "Captain, the reactor is held together with tape and prayers. I can give you maybe 2 hours of full power before we blow ourselves up." "Then give me 2 hours, old friend. You will have them." The Velen flagship sat at the center of the enemy formation like a throne made of steel and fire. It was 3 kilometers long, bristling with weapons that could crack moons. The Velen were the rulers of the Galactic Dominion, a warrior race that had conquered 47 species across 300 years. They had never lost a war. They had never faced an enemy who refused to surrender. Until today. Te watched as his ships began their attack. The carrier Eternal Hope launched its fighters in desperate waves. The destroyer Brave Sun charged straight into enemy lines, guns blazing, taking down 3 Velen cruisers before it exploded in a ball of white fire. The frigate Morning Star rammed itself into an enemy battleship, the crews of both vessels dying together in the cold silence of space. One by one, human ships fell, and one by one, they took enemies with them. "Sir," Yuna said, her console flashing red with warnings. "The Velen flagship is charging its main weapon. If it fires, it will destroy what remains of our fleet in one shot." Te looked at the massive ship on his screen. He did the math in his head. "Wu," he said into the comm, "how much power can you give me if I need to go fast?" There was a pause. Wu understood what Te was asking. "Everything," the engineer said quietly. "I can give you everything." "Then give me everything." The Defiant surged forward. The engines screamed as Wu pushed them beyond their limits. Warning lights flashed across every console. The hull groaned like a dying animal. But the ship flew true, cutting through space like a knife through silk. "All hands," Te announced. "Prepare for impact. It has been my honor to serve with you." The Velen flagship grew larger and larger in the view screen. Te could see the glow of its main weapon charging, the energy building like a storm about to break. He aimed for the center of that glow. Yuna grabbed his hand. Her fingers were cold. "I am not afraid," she said. "Neither am I," Te lied. The Defiant struck the Velen flagship like a fist from an angry god. The explosion was beautiful. It was terrible. It was the last thing 10,000 humans ever saw, and they saw it together. Te did not remember the impact. He remembered heat and noise, and the feeling of his body being thrown like a doll. Then there was darkness, deep and complete, and he thought he was dead. He woke to pain. Every part of his body hurt. His left arm was broken. His ribs were cracked. Blood filled his mouth, tasting of copper and salt. He was lying on a cold metal floor, in a room he did not recognize. A cell. He was in a cell. Tay tried to stand, and failed. He tried again, and managed to sit up, his back against the wall. The room was small and dark, lit only by a faint blue glow from the ceiling. There were no windows. There was only a heavy door made of something that looked like black stone. He was alive. He should not be alive. The Defiant had been torn apart. Everyone on board should be dead. The door opened. Tay had seen Valan before, in intelligence reports and battlefield footage, but he had never seen one this close. The creature that entered his cell was 7 feet tall, covered in scales the color of dried blood. Its eyes were yellow, with pupils like slits. Scars covered its face and arms, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, each one a mark of battle survived. The Valan wore armor, made of black metal, and carried no weapons. It did not need weapons. Its hands ended in claws that could tear through steel. It stood over Tay, and looked down at him with an expression that might have been curiosity. "You are the captain," it said. Its voice was deep and rough, like stones grinding together. "You are the one who destroyed my ship." Tay spat blood onto the floor. "Did I kill you? Because you look alive to me. I must have missed." The Velen did not react to the insult. It simply continued to stare at Tay with those cold yellow eyes. "I am Elder Kirin," it said. "I have served the Dominion for 300 years. I have conquered 47 species. I'd have killed more enemies than you have ever met. And in all that time, I have never seen anything like what your people did today. We call it fighting back. You call it suicide. Your fleet was outnumbered 20-1. You had no chance of victory. Any rational species would have surrendered and negotiated terms. Your people could have lived as servants of the Dominion. Instead, you chose death." Tay laughed. It hurt his broken ribs, but he laughed anyway. "You think we would rather be slaves than corpses? You do not know humans at all." Then it sat down on the floor, across from Tay, folding its massive legs beneath it. The movement was strange, almost peaceful, not the behavior of a conqueror looking at conquered prey. "No," Kirin said slowly, "I do not know humans. That is why I kept you alive. That is why you are here." "To answer your questions?" "To help me understand, because in 300 years of war, you are the first enemy that has ever frightened me." Tay looked at this ancient warrior, this monster who had destroyed worlds, and saw something unexpected in its eyes. Fear. Real fear. And somewhere deep in Tay's broken chest, a small flame of hope began to burn. 3 days passed in the cell. Tay measured time by the meals they brought him. Twice a day, a Velen guard would slide a tray through a slot in the door. The food was gray and tasteless, but it kept him alive. Someone wanted him alive. That meant he still had value. That meant he still had a chance. His wounds healed slowly. His broken arm remained useless, hanging in a rough sling he had made from his torn uniform. His ribs ached with every breath. But he was still breathing. That was more than he had expected. On the 4th day, Kirin returned. The elder warrior entered the cell and sat in the same spot as before, legs folded, yellow eyes watching Tay with that same unsettling patience. Kirin moved like a creature that had all the time in the universe, and perhaps it did. 300 years of life meant that days and weeks were nothing. A human lifetime was barely a moment. "I have been reading about your species," Kirin said. "The Dominion has collected data on humans for 50 years. Population numbers, military strength, technological development. But the numbers do not explain what I saw at the battle. Numbers never tell the whole story, Tay said. Then tell me the story. Tell me what makes humans fight when fighting is hopeless. Tell me why your species refuses to die. Tay thought about how to answer. He could have talked about military training, or national pride, or the instinct for survival. But those were easy answers, surface answers. Kieran was not asking about the surface. Kieran wanted to understand the deep water. Let me tell you about a woman named Hannah, Tay said. Kieran tilted its head slightly, listening. Hannah was not a soldier. She was a teacher. She taught small children how to read and count. She lived in a small apartment in a city called Busan. Nobody would have called her brave or special. What did she do? One night, the building across the street from hers caught fire. The flames spread fast. People were running out into the street, screaming. But there was a child trapped on the third floor. A little girl. Her parents were not home. She was alone, and she was going to burn. Tay paused, remembering the story his grandmother had told him when he was young. Hannah did not think. She did not calculate her chances, or weigh the risks. She just ran into the burning building. The stairs were already on fire. The smoke was so thick she could not see. But she kept climbing. She found the little girl hiding under a bed, crying. She picked up the child and carried her to the window. Did she escape? She threw the child to the people waiting below. They caught the girl. She survived without a scratch. And Hannah? The floor collapsed before she could jump. She died in the fire. She burned to death saving a stranger's child. A child she had never met. A child who would never remember her face. Kieran was silent for a long time. Tay could see the alien processing this story, trying to fit it into its understanding of the universe. This is inefficient, Kieran finally said. A trained teacher is valuable. A child is replaceable. The logical choice would be to let the child die and preserve the adult. Humans are not logical. Clearly. But why? Why would she throw away her life for someone she did not know? What did she gain from this sacrifice? Nothing. She gained nothing. That is the point. Kieran's claws scraped against the metal floor. The sound was like knives on stone. I do not understand. I know you do not. That is why you have never beaten us. You think strength comes from power, from numbers, from weapons and ships, and the ability to destroy. That is just violence. What is strength then? Tay leaned forward, ignoring the pain in his ribs. Strength is a woman running into a fire she knows will kill her because a child is crying. Strength is a soldier throwing himself on a grenade so his friends can live. Strength is a mother giving her last piece of bread to her children and telling them she is not hungry. Strength is love that costs everything and expects nothing in return. Kieran stood abruptly. For a moment, Tay thought the alien was going to kill him. Those claws could open his throat in half a second. But Kieran just turned and walked to the door. I will return, Kieran said. I have more questions. Then it was gone. Far from the Velen prison ship, in a damaged shuttle drifting through an asteroid field, Sergeant Bora was making a plan. She was young for a sergeant, only 26 years old, but age meant nothing in wartime. Skill meant everything. She had survived 12 engagements with the Velen. She had pulled wounded soldiers out of burning ships. She had killed enemies with guns, with knives, with her bare hands when she had nothing else. She was not pretty. War had taken that from her. A plasma burn covered the left side of her face, twisting the skin into something that scared children. She did not mind. Pretty soldiers died fast. Ugly soldiers survived. We have confirmed the location, said Private Day. He was young, even younger than Bora, with nervous eyes that never stopped moving. He had been a student before the war. Now he was a killer. The universe had a cruel sense of humor. The prison ship is holding position near the gas giant. Minimal escort. They think the battle is over. How many guards? Unknown, but the ship is damaged. Captain Tay's ram did more than just destroy the flagship. It crippled their command structure. They are vulnerable. Medic Un looked up from her work. She was bandaging her own wounds, wrapping white cloth around cuts that should have been treated in a hospital. There were no hospitals left. We are 5 people, Sergeant. 5 people in a broken shuttle with limited weapons and no support. This is not a rescue mission. This is a death sentence. Probably, Bora agreed. Do you want to leave him there? Un did not answer. She did not need to. They all knew Captain Tay. They had served under him for years. He had saved their lives more times than they could count. When the war started going badly, when other officers were abandoning their posts and fleeing to the outer colonies, Tay stayed. He fought. He gave them hope when hope was a luxury they could not afford. Now he was alone on an enemy ship, probably being tortured, probably dying, and they were the only ones who could help him. We go in quiet, Bora said. Day, you find me a way onto that ship. A maintenance hatch, a damage section, anything. Yoon, you keep us alive long enough to reach him. And everyone else, you follow my orders without question. We get the captain. We get out. Simple. Simple, Day repeated, his voice shaking slightly. Sure, simple. Bora put her hand on his shoulder. Her grip was firm and warm. I know you are scared. I am scared too. But fear is not weakness. Fear is your brain telling you that something matters. And the captain matters. So we use our fear. We let it make us sharp. And we bring him home. Day nodded slowly. The fear was still in his eyes, but something else was there now too. Something that looked like determination. When do we move? Yoon asked. Bora looked out the shuttle window at the distant shape of the prison ship, a black spot against the swirling colors of the gas giant. Tonight, she said. We move tonight. And may whatever gods are listening have mercy on anyone who gets in our way. In his cell, Tay did not know that help was coming. He did not know that 5 broken soldiers were planning the impossible. He only knew that he was alone, that he was hurt, and that somewhere out there, an ancient alien warrior was trying to understand what it meant to be human. He closed his eyes and thought about home, about his mother's garden, about the smell of rain on warm streets, about all the small, beautiful things that made life worth living. And he held on to hope, because that was what humans did, even when there was no reason for it, especially when there was no reason for it. Huron could not sleep. This was unusual. The elder warrior had trained his body over 3 centuries to rest when rest was needed, to conserve energy like a weapon waiting to be used. Sleep was a tool, nothing more. But tonight, sleep would not come. He sat in his quarters, surrounded by the trophies of his conquests. A blade from the last king of the Tyranny, a flag from the fallen Republic of Selos, a skull, cleaned and polished, that once belonged to the most dangerous enemy he had ever faced before the humans. Each trophy told a story of victory. Each one was proof that the Dominion was right, that strength was the only truth in the universe. But now these trophies felt hollow. They felt like lies. Huron turned to his data terminal and began to search the human archives. The Dominion had captured millions of files from Earth before its destruction. History, literature, art, music, science, the complete record of a species that had existed for only a few 100,000 years, a blink of an eye compared to the ancient races of the galaxy. He read for hours. He read until his eyes burned and his mind ached. And the more he read, the less he understood. He found the story of a man named Jin. Jin lived in a small village during a time of great violence on Earth. Soldiers came to his village and killed everyone. His wife, his children, his parents. Everyone he loved died in a single night of blood and fire. Jin alone survived, hidden beneath the bodies of his family. For years after, Jin hunted the man who led the soldiers. He tracked him across continents. He learned to fight. He learned to kill. He became a weapon made of grief and rage. And finally, after 7 years, he found the man. The killer was old now, sick, living alone in a crumbling house. Jin stood over him with a knife, ready to take his revenge. But he did not kill him. Instead, Jin sat down beside the old man and asked him why. "Why did you destroy my life? Why did you take everything from me?" The old man had no good answers. He spoke of orders and fear and the madness of war. He wept. He begged for death. Jin put down his knife. He helped the old man stand. And over the next 10 years, until the old man died of his sickness, Jin cared for him. He fed him. He cleaned his wounds. He sat with him through the long nights when the memories were too heavy to bear alone. When asked why he did this, Jin said only, "Hatred was killing me faster than it could ever kill him. I chose to live instead." Kiran read this story 3 times. He could not make sense of it. In Velen culture, such mercy would be considered madness, weakness, a betrayal of everyone the enemy had killed. And yet somehow, this human had found strength in forgiveness. He had turned his greatest pain into something that looked almost like peace. The next day, Kiran returned to Tae's cell with more questions. "Tell me about your music," Kiran said. Tae looked surprised. Of all the questions he expected, this was not one of them. "Music? I have been listening to human music. It serves no purpose. It does not communicate information efficiently. It does not help with survival or reproduction. It is noise arranged in patterns. Why do you create it?" Tae smiled, though the expression was weak. His wounds were healing slowly, but he was still pale, still fragile. "Because silence makes us sad." That is not an answer. It is the only answer I have. Humans create music because we feel things that words cannot express. Joy, sorrow, love, fear. Sometimes the only way to share those feelings is through sounds that have no meaning except the meaning we give them. Kiran considered this. The Velan do not create art. We do not make music or paintings or stories. Such things are distractions from the work of survival. And are you happy? The question hit Kiran like a physical blow. Happy. When was the last time he had thought about happiness? When was the last time he had felt anything other than duty and discipline and the cold satisfaction of victory? He could not remember. Happiness is irrelevant, Kiran said, but the words sounded hollow even to his own ears. Happiness is everything, Tae replied. What is the point of surviving if you do not live? What is the point of conquering the galaxy if every star you claim is just another burden? You have taken 47 species. Have you ever sat with any of them and listened to their songs? Have you ever tasted their food or learned their dances or heard them laugh? They are subjects. They exist to serve the Dominion. They exist because the universe made them. Just like it made you. Just like it made us. And every one of them had music, Kiran. Every one of them had art and stories and dreams. And you burned it all because you did not understand it. Kiran stood suddenly, his claws scraping the floor. You speak as if we are the villains. We brought order to chaos. We ended wars that lasted millennia. We united species that would have destroyed each other. You united them in chains. That is not peace. That is prison. And what would humans have done differently? Your own history is soaked in blood. You have committed atrocities against your own kind that rival anything the Dominion has done. Tae nodded slowly. Yes, we have. We have been monsters. We have been cruel and stupid and blind. But we have also been kind. We have also been brave. And every time we fell into darkness, we found our way back to the light. Not because we are better than other species, but because we keep trying. We keep choosing to be better, even when it is hard. Especially when it is hard. Kieran sat back down. The anger was draining out of him, leaving something empty and cold in its place. There was a woman, Kieran said quietly, in the archives, a doctor named Nari. She lived during a great plague on your world. Millions were dying. There was no cure, no treatment, no hope. The sick were left alone in quarantine zones to die in agony. No one would enter those zones. The risk was too great. But Nari did. Yes, she walked into the death zones with nothing but basic supplies. She knew she would become infected. She knew she would die. But she went anyway, because the dying needed someone to hold their hands. She spent her last weeks sitting with strangers, singing to them, telling them stories, making sure they did not face the end alone. Tay closed his eyes. Every human child learns it. Why would she do this? She saved no one. She cured nothing. Her death was meaningless. Her death was the most meaningful thing she ever did. She showed those people that they mattered, that someone cared, that even in the darkest moment, they were not forgotten. That is not meaningless, Kieran. That is everything. Kieran looked at his hands, hands that had killed thousands, hands that had built an empire on bones and ashes. And for the first time in 3 centuries, he felt something that might have been shame. You are the strangest species in the galaxy, he said. You are weak, short-lived, you have no natural weapons, no armor, no venom, and yet you have never been conquered, not truly. Tay opened his eyes and met Kieran's gaze. We have conquered ourselves 1,000 times. We have committed horrors against our own kind that would make your empire look merciful, and every time we climbed back. That is why you will never break us. How can you choose to be better? How do you find the strength? Tay smiled, and for a moment, despite his wounds and his chains and his certain death, he looked almost peaceful. We do not find it, he said. We make it. Every day, every choice, every small act of kindness in a universe that does not care. That is what it means to be human. We build hope out of nothing, and we refuse to let it die. Kieran left the cell without another word, but as he walked through the dark corridors of his ship, he felt something shifting inside him, something old and heavy beginning to crack. And he wondered for the first time in 300 years if everything he believed might be wrong. The prison ship hung in space like a wounded beast, its hull scarred by the battle that had crippled it. Emergency lights flickered along its surface. Repair drones crawled across the damage like metal insects. The ship was vulnerable. The ship was distracted. And that was all Bora needed. We go in through the waste disposal hatch, she whispered to her team. They were crowded in the shuttle's cargo bay, checking weapons and adjusting armor for the 100th time. Day found a gap in their sensor coverage. We have maybe 3 minutes before they notice us. 3 minutes, Yoon repeated. To board an enemy ship, find the captain, and get out. This is insane. Yes. Any other complaints? No one spoke. They had made their choice. They were here. There was no going back. The shuttle drifted closer to the prison ship, engines silent, running on momentum alone. Bora watched the distance counter tick down. 1,000 meters. 500. Contact. The airlock hissed as it connected to the waste hatch. Bora was first through, her weapon raised, her eyes scanning the dark corridor ahead. The smell hit her immediately. Rot and chemicals and something else, something alien that made her stomach turn. She ignored it. She had smelled worse. Move, she ordered. They moved through the ship like ghosts. Day had memorized the layout from stolen schematics. Left at the first junction. Right at the second. Down 2 levels through a maintenance shaft that was barely wide enough for human bodies. The Velen were larger than humans. They had not designed these spaces for intruders their size. A guard appeared around a corner. Bora killed it before it could make a sound. Her knife went into its throat, through the gap between the scales, finding the soft flesh beneath. The Velen gurgled and fell. She caught the body, lowered it gently, and kept moving. There was no time for hesitation. The captain was waiting. They reached the detention level. 3 more guards stood between them and the cells. Bora signaled her team. They attacked from 2 directions at once, fast and silent. Un took 1 guard down with a shot to the eye. Day tackled another, jamming his blade under its jaw. Bora handled the 3rd herself, breaking its neck with a move she had learned in basic training a lifetime ago. Cell block 7, Day gasped. He was bleeding from a gash on his arm where a guard's claw had caught him. The captain should be there. They ran. The alarm started screaming when they were halfway to the cell. Red lights flooded the corridors. Doors began to seal. Bora cursed and ran faster. They had minutes now, maybe less. Day, the door. Day slammed his hand against the cell block access panel. His fingers flew across the alien interface, trying combinations, hacking protocols he had studied but never used. Behind them, Bora could hear footsteps. Heavy footsteps. Velen reinforcements coming fast. Got it. The door slid open. They poured through just as the first plasma bolts scorched the wall where Bora's head had been a moment before. She turned and fired back, her shots buying seconds, precious seconds. Find him! Find the captain! They ran down the row of cells. Most were empty. Some held bodies that had stopped moving long ago. Then Yoon shouted, "Here! He is here!" Captain Tay was barely recognizable. His face was swollen and bruised. His arm hung at an unnatural angle. Blood soaked through bandages that had not been changed in days. But his eyes were open. His eyes were alive. "Sergeant Bora," he whispered, "you should not have come." "Shut up, sir. We are leaving." They pulled him from the cell. He could barely stand. Yoon slipped under his good arm, taking his weight, helping him move. Day covered the rear, firing at the Velen guards who were now flooding the corridor. We cannot go back the way we came, Bora realized. The corridor behind them was filling with enemies. Too many to fight through. They were trapped. "The shuttle bay," Day said. "There is a secondary hangar 2 levels up. If we can reach it, we can steal a ship. Then we go up." They fought their way to the stairs. Bora took point, her weapon singing death with every shot. Yoon carried the captain. Day watched their backs, his young face twisted with concentration and fear, and something that looked almost like joy. This was what he was made for. This was where he belonged. A blast door began to close ahead of them. "Go!" Bora shouted. "Go now!" Day sprinted forward. He reached the door just as it was about to seal, and jammed his body into the gap. The machinery groaned against him. His armor cracked. But he held the door open. "Move!" he gasped. "I cannot hold it long." Yoon and the captain squeezed through. Bora was next. She stopped at the door and looked at Day, at the blood running from his nose, at the way his whole body was shaking with effort. "Come through," she said. "That is an order. If I let go, it closes. You will be trapped." "Private Day." "It has been an honor, Sergeant." He smiled, and for a moment he looked like the student he used to be, young and hopeful and full of dreams. "Tell my mother I was brave." He let go of the door. It slammed shut with a sound like thunder. On the other side, Bora heard plasma fire. She heard Day scream. Then she heard nothing at all. "We have to keep moving," Yoon said. Her voice was steady, but tears were running down her face. "He bought us time. We cannot waste it." The shuttle bay was just ahead. They could see it through the windows. Ships lined up in neat rows. Freedom. Escape. Life. And standing between them and the bay was Elder Kirin. The ancient warrior blocked the corridor, his massive form filling the space. His plasma blade hummed in his hand, casting blue light across his scarred face. His yellow eyes watched them approach with an expression Bora could not read. "You cannot win," he said. "You are barely standing." Bora stepped forward. She had no ammunition left. Her knife was slick with blood. Every muscle in her body ached, but she raised her fists anyway. "I do not need to win," she said. "I just need to buy him time." She charged. Kieran moved like water, flowing around her attacks, striking with precision that came from centuries of practice. His first blow cracked her ribs. His second sent her crashing into the wall. His third opened a gash across her shoulder that went down to the bone. But she kept getting up. Every time he knocked her down, she rose again. Every time he hurt her, she came back for more. Her fists were broken. Her face was a mask of blood, and still she fought. Finally, Kieran's blade was at her throat. One push, and she would be dead. One small movement, and it would all be over. But Kieran did not push. He looked at this broken human woman. He watched her trying to crawl toward her captain even now, even with a blade at her neck, even with death certain. And he remembered everything Tay had told him. About Hana running into the fire, about Jin forgiving his enemy, about Nari holding the hands of the dying. This was what humans were. This was what they had always been. Not their ships or their weapons or their numbers. This stubborn, illogical, beautiful refusal to give up. Kieran lowered his blade. He stepped aside. Yoon stared at him in shock. "What are you doing?" "Something I should have done 300 years ago," Kieran said. He reached into his armor and pulled out a data chip. "My command codes. They won't disable the pursuit systems. Take your captain. Take your ship. Go." "Why?" Bora gasped from the floor. "Why are you helping us?" Kieran looked at her, and for the first time since she had met him, Bora saw something human in those alien eyes. Something that looked like hope. "Because you showed me what strength really looks like," he said, "and I am tired of being weak." They took the ship. They took the captain. And as they flew into the darkness of space, leaving the prison ship behind, Bora looked back at the figure standing in the hangar bay. An ancient warrior watching them go. A monster learning to be something else. And she understood for the first time that victory was not about winning. It was about changing what winning meant. The stolen ship drifted through the cold emptiness between stars. Its engines were damaged. Its life support was failing. But it was free, and the people inside it were alive. That was more than any of them had expected. Captain Tay lay on the floor of the small cargo hold, his head resting on a folded jacket that Un had placed beneath him. His wounds were too severe. Everyone knew it, no one said it out loud. Bora sat against the wall, her broken hands wrapped in strips of cloth. She had not spoken since they escaped. The loss of Day sat heavy on her chest like a stone that would never move. And in the corner, watching everything with those ancient yellow eyes, sat Elder Kieran. The alien had followed them onto the ship. No one had stopped him. No one had questioned why he came. Perhaps they were too tired. Perhaps they understood that something had changed in him that could not be unchanged. Un checked the navigation console. "We are 3 days from the nearest human outpost, if the engines hold. If we do not run out of air first." "They will hold," Bora said quietly. Wu would have made sure they held. She did not know if that was true. Engineer Wu was dead, burned to ash along with the Defiant and everyone else who had stayed behind. But she needed to believe in something, so she believed in Wu. Kieran moved across the hold and sat down beside Captain Tay. The human's breathing was shallow, irregular. His skin had taken on a gray color that meant his body was shutting down. Death was coming. It was only a matter of time. "I have killed thousands," Kieran said softly. The others could hear him, but he spoke as if he and Tay were alone in the universe. "I have ended civilizations. I have watched entire species beg for mercy, and I have given them none. For 300 years, I was the blade of the Dominion. I was proud of what I was. Tay opened his eyes. They were cloudy with pain, but awareness still flickered behind them. And now I feel sick when I remember their faces. The ones I killed, the ones I conquered. They had music, Captain. They had stories and dreams, and children who loved them. And I burned it all, because I was told to, because I did not stop to ask if what I was doing was right. You are asking now. Too late. It is 300 years too late. Tay reached out with his good hand and gripped Kieran's arm. The gesture was weak, barely more than a touch, but Kieran felt it like an electric shock. It is never too late, Tay said. That is another thing humans believe. No matter how much darkness is behind you, there is always a chance to walk toward the light. Always. Kieran looked at this dying man, this fragile, broken creature who should have been nothing but a footnote in the Dominion's history, and he felt something crack open inside his chest. Something that had been frozen for centuries. You are dying, Kieran said. You know this. Yes. And you are not afraid? Tay smiled. Blood stained his teeth, but the smile was real. I am terrified, but fear is not the opposite of courage. Fear is what makes courage possible. A human taught me that. A woman I loved very much, a long time ago. Tell me about her. Her name was Mina. She was a pilot. Best I ever saw. She could fly through asteroid fields with her eyes closed. She laughed at danger. She laughed at everything, actually. She used to say that the universe was too beautiful to take seriously. What happened to her? She died in the first battle of the war. Her ship was hit. She had time to eject, but she saw a transport full of civilians in the path of a Velen cruiser. She flew her damaged ship into the cruiser instead, took it down, saved 300 people. Children. Kieran was silent. I used to be angry at her, Tay continued, for leaving me, for choosing strangers over our future together. But now I understand. She did not choose strangers over me. She chose love over fear, and that is what made her human. The ship shuddered as it passed through a debris field. Un made adjustments at the console. Bora watched the stars slide past the tiny windows, and Kieran sat with a dying enemy, learning what it meant to live. Before you die, Kieran said slowly, I want to tell you something. I want to tell you who humans truly are. Tay looked at him with fading eyes. I would like to hear it. Kieran took a deep breath. The words came slowly, as if he was discovering them for the first time. You are chaos wrapped in flesh. You love things that can hurt you. You hope when there is no reason to hope. You forgive the unforgivable. You create beauty in the darkest places. You throw yourselves into fire for strangers and call it honor. His voice grew stronger. You are broken and wounded and scarred, and you refuse to stay down. Every time the universe knocks you to the ground, you stand back up and spit in its face. Every time someone tells you something is impossible, you do it anyway just to prove them wrong. Tay was crying now, silent tears running down his ruined face. You are the most terrifying species I have ever encountered, Kieran continued. Not because of your weapons, not because of your ships, but because you make the rest of us question everything we believe. You show us that strength is not about conquest. It is about compassion, about sacrifice, about the stubborn, illogical, beautiful refusal to let hope die. Kieran leaned closer. The Dominion fears you because you cannot be controlled. You cannot be predicted. You cannot be broken. It is because your strength does not come from your bodies or your technology. It comes from something inside you that no empire can conquer. It comes from love. Tay's hand tightened on Kieran's arm. His breathing was slowing. The end was close. What will you do now? Tay whispered. Kieran looked out the window at the stars. The same stars he had once conquered in the name of an empire, that suddenly felt hollow and wrong. "I will tell them," he said. "Every species we have subjugated, every world we have crushed. I will tell them what humans taught me. I will show them that there is another way, that the galaxy does not have to belong to the strongest. It can belong to those brave enough to love it." Tay smiled one last time. "Then we did not lose after all. No, you won. You won the moment you refused to give up." Captain Han Tay closed his eyes. His grip on Kieran's arm relaxed. And in the silence of the stolen ship, drifting between the stars, a human soul slipped away into whatever waited beyond. Bora rose from her place by the wall. She walked over and knelt beside her captain. Her hand touched his face, gentle and reverent. "Rest now, sir," she said. "We will take it from here." She looked at Kieran, the alien who had been their enemy, the monster who had chosen to become something else. "You meant what you said about telling the other species?" "Every word." Bora nodded slowly. "Then we have work to do." 3 days later they reached the human outpost. The news of Captain Tay's death spread quickly, but so did the story of his final days. The story of an alien warrior who sat with a dying human and learned what it meant to be truly strong. Kieran kept his promise. He traveled to the subjugated worlds. He spoke to the conquered peoples. He told them about the humans who had shown him a different path. And one by one, sparks of rebellion began to catch fire across the galaxy. It took years. It took blood and sacrifice and more death than anyone wanted to count. But slowly, surely, the Dominion began to crumble. Not from military defeat, but from something far more powerful. From the idea that had spread like wildfire through the stars. The idea that compassion was stronger than conquest. That love was stronger than fear. That hope, once kindled, could not be extinguished. On the day the last Dominion fortress fell, they built a statue in the center of the new Galactic Alliance capital. It showed 2 figures standing side by side, a Velen warrior and a human captain. Not fighting, not conquering, just standing together, hands clasped in understanding. The plaque beneath read simply, "Humanity taught us that strength is not found in conquest, but in compassion." In the stubborn, illogical, beautiful refusal to let hope die. Signed, Elder Kieran, First Ambassador of the Free Valen. Bora was there for the dedication ceremony. She was old now, her hair gray and her face lined with years. But her eyes were still sharp, still full of the fire that had driven her through the corridors of that prison ship so long ago. A young Valen approached her after the ceremony. He was small for his kind, barely 6 feet tall, with scales that shimmered green in the sunlight. "You knew him," the young Valen said. "The human captain. You were there when he died." "I was." "What was he like?" Bora looked up at the statue, at the bronze face of the man she had served and loved and mourned for decades. "He was afraid," she said. "Right up until the end, he was terrified. But he did not let the fear stop him. He did not let it make him small. He used it to make himself bigger, more human." She smiled at the young alien. "And that is the secret, child, the one your people are still learning. Fear is not the enemy. Surrender is. As long as you keep fighting, keep hoping, keep loving, you can never truly lose." The young Velen nodded slowly, processing her words. Then he looked up at the statue, and something shifted in his eyes, something that looked like understanding. "Thank you," he said, "for teaching us." Bora put her hand on his shoulder, the same gesture she had used with Private Day so many years ago. "Thank Captain Tay. Thank all of them, the humans who died so you could be free." She looked out at the crowd gathered in the plaza. Humans and Velen and dozens of other species, all standing together under a sky full of stars. They are the ones who showed us what we could become. Now it is up to us to prove them right. She walked away, disappearing into the crowd, another old soldier fading into history. But her words remained. And across the galaxy, in 1,000 different languages, on 1,000,000 different worlds, people continued to tell the story. The story of how humanity taught the universe to hope.